Hey there, Griffin here from Mud, Sweat, and Gears, and today I'm going to help you build your bike. So today we're going to go over a few things to make sure that the bike's put together safely, and that way you're going to be able to get outside and enjoy it. That being said, we do recommend you take it to your local bike shop and have someone qualified look it over. So let's get after it. So we're going to install the seat post. There's a couple things to note. The first being you want some grease on the seat post. So if there isn't any grease, you can apply a light layer. It's just going to make it go into the seat tube a lot easier. Also, on your seat post, there's going to be something called minimum insertion. You'll see a line or written on the seat post somewhere. That's the minimum amount that we want into the seat post or the seat tube. So when you're inserting it, that's the minimum amount we want into the bike frame. So you don't want to go above that point. So to put the seat post in, you just slide it into the seat tube. And once you kind of have it at the height you want, all you're going to do is take the seat post clamp and you're going to clamp that shut. When we're closing that, you want it to be nice and firm. So if it's too tight to close, you're going to want to back that nut off a little bit, just make it a little bit easier. And if you go to close it and it's too loose, you're going to want to tighten that nut. So when you're closing it, it's nice and firm towards the end. And just like that, you got the seat post installed. So when you get your bike, you're going to notice that the front wheel is not attached. We're going to go through a couple things to show you how to do that. So when putting your wheel on, there's a few things we need to do. So this is the part on the wheel or on the axle that we need to get into the slots on the fork. So that's what we're going to be lining up. So while doing that, we also have to make sure that the brake rotor goes in between the brake pads on the caliper. So there's going to be a space on between the brake pads that we need this rotor to go into. So while that brake rotor is going into the pads, we want to make sure our axle goes in this slot on each side. And you want to give it a nice big push up there. So there we go. So now that that's in, that's all lined up, you want to hold the nut on this side, your left hand if you're looking at the bike this way. And then you want to start tightening this quick release axle. So you want to tighten it so that when you do it up, there's some tension there. So if it's too loose, when you go to do it up, it just flops around. We don't want that. And if you do it up and it's too tight, you can't even do it up. So you're looking for that right tightness where when you do it up, there's some tension there. So again, you want to make sure the wheel's nice and pushed up. Go to tighten it. And there we go. So at about that 90 degrees, there's lots of tension there. It's not loose, it's not impossible to get up, it's just nice and snug there. And then that wheel's now on there. So something else you might run into when you're installing your wheel is you put the wheel in there, you did the axle up, and then you go to spin it, and you hear that rotor rubbing. So that most likely means that you just don't have the wheel or the axle all the way in the dropouts. So you want to undo that quick release axle again, loosen it a little bit. So push it up nice and high, make sure it's all the way in the dropouts, and then tighten it up. You want that nice and firm. And once you got that, that sound's gone. So when you receive your bike, you're going to notice that the handlebars aren't attached. That's what the stem does. So on your handlebars, there's usually some sort of logo or symbol to indicate the center of the bars, such as this cross, but it might be an X, a logo, some lines, again, just there to help you locate the center. So we're going to put that, again, roughly in the center, facing forward. Grab your stem plate, throw that up, and then you can start threading in the bolts that are going to hold your handlebars on. So something to keep in mind when you're doing this is you want the gap on the top of the stem and the bottom of the stem to be equal. So you don't want there to be a giant gap on the top versus the bottom, unless the stem says otherwise. but we're aiming for that equal gap top and bottom. And once those are all started, we can get them a little bit firmer. And here you want to go in a crisscross pattern as to not tighten one bolt more than another. There we go. Awesome. And there's still a little bit of movement there, which is perfect because we want to set the roll for the bars, but you want to do that on the ground. So let's do that. So once you have that stem mostly tightened, this gives us a chance to fine tune it so we can set the roll of the bar. So the bars can roll forward and back. Again, we're still aiming to have this cross roughly in the center of the stem, but if you want to have them rolled forward or back a little bit, then that's to your preference. That being said, we're looking to most likely have the rise in the bar at the most upright position. So that's roughly about here. So now that we have the bars in place, we can just go ahead and tighten the stem down. So you want these to be fairly tight. And again, we're looking at doing it in a crisscross pattern. Awesome. And if you have one of these handy torque wrenches, then it just lets you fine tune and get those to torque spec. So you're looking for about 5 to 7 Newton meters. So we'll just go ahead and do that. There's 1, 2, oh, 3, and 4. And your handlebars and stem are all good to go. So the final thing we want to check are the steer tube bolts on the stem and the top cap bolt. The steer tube bolts are here and here, so these help hold the stem onto your steer tube. So they're an important bolt to make sure that they're nice and tight, nice and snug. So we're going to go ahead and do that. It's going to be a 4mm Allen key. And again, we just want to make sure those are tightened down. Yes. And yep. So those are both nice and snug. We'll just go ahead and check that top cap bolt. That's going to be a 5mm. Make sure that's snug. All right, and that is good. So those are nice and snug, just ensuring it's going to be safe to ride. So now we're going to install the pedals. There are a couple important things to note before we do that. The most important thing is there is a right side and a left side pedal, and it is important to get that correct. If you get it incorrect, it's going to result in damage to your pedals, your crank arms, and it's going to be a costly mistake to make. So again, that's why we recommend you take it to your local bike shop and have a professional build your bike. It's just going to give you that peace of mind knowing it's been assembled correctly. That being said, if you do want to assemble it yourself, there's a couple things to note to just make sure you get the correct pedal on the correct side. The first being on the inside of the pedal spindle, they usually write L and R, left and right. So it's a quick, easy indicator to know which pedal goes on which side. Another indication is the beveled edge. You want the beveled edge of the pedal facing forward. So if it has a beveled edge, you want that facing forward, and again, it's just another indication that you have the correct pedal on the correct side. Something else you want to do, you want to make sure there's some grease on those pedal threads. It's just going to make it thread on a lot easier. I always start by threading the pedal on by hand, just to make sure it's going on nice and easy, and then you got nothing to worry about. So with that, let's install some pedals. So we're going to start by installing the right side pedal. You're going to know it's the right side because, again, we're going to have that beveled edge on the front of the pedal facing forward. And this pedal says R, meaning right. You will need a pedal wrench unless the inside of your pedal is hollow, and then you can use the accordion Allen key. So we're going to start by threading it on. And the threads for the pedal should be greased, but if they're not, you can apply some grease to them as well. So that's threaded on there. And again, we're turning those threads to the front of the wheel, or to the front wheel. And once we have that on there, we'll take our pedal wrench and we'll just finish it up here. So that's now on there pretty tight, but we're going to tighten it pretty good with this pedal wrench. So grabbing the back tire is leverage. We're going to push down, and we're looking for about 35 Newton meters of force on that pedal, so it needs to be pretty tight. And then all we're going to do is the left side. So we're going to install the left side pedal here. So again, it's important to make sure you have the correct pedal for the correct side. This says L on it. That front beveled edge is facing forward. So that tells me that this is the left side pedal. Again, you got to make sure you have the correct one. Otherwise, you risk damaging your pedals and crank arms and potentially having to replace them. So once we've established that, we can start threading it on. I like to start threading it on by hand to get started. So I'm turning this towards the front wheel. And once we have that started, we can go ahead and finish that off with the pedal wrench. So cheat here, threading that on. Once you get to the end, then we're going to tighten it all the way. So again, we're looking for that 35 Newton meters of force. So you can grab the back tire, push down, and now that pedal's on there nice and tight. So just like that, you got your pedals installed. So I hope these videos have helped you build your bike. Again, we do strongly recommend that you take to your local bike shop and have a professional build and or look over your bike. That way you can ensure that it's been put together safely and correctly. These videos are here to assist you in assembling your bike, but they don't account for proper installation or adjustment. So thanks for shopping with Mud, Sweat, and Gears. We do appreciate it, and we hope to see you again.